After fixing that old Macintosh Performa 450, getting it online, it's finally time to...
Enough teasing already, show us that NetBSD thing, now!
See, this is what happens when you're rushing things. Retrocomputing is the use of older computer hardware and software in modern times. I'm the Vintage Collector and these are my stories. NetBSD, which got its name from the growth of networks such as the Internet and an emphasis on the distributed collaborative development, has its roots in BSD and 386BSD. BSD, the Berkeley software distribution, evolved from the University of California in Berkeley, goes back to as early as 1977. Being based itself on AT&T Unix, many proprietary components were removed by 1991 and repackaged as the freely redistributable Net2 release. When progress on 386BSD stalled, developers Chris Dimitriou, Theodore Add, Adam Glass and Charles Hannum forked 386BSD and Net2 into a new project named NetBSD in March 1993, releasing NetBSD 0.8 already in April the same year. With NetBSD 1.0 coming in October 1994, it already supported a broad number of platforms, amongst them PCs, 68K Macs and more. That release also incorporated code from 4.4 BSD Lite to replace some legally encumbered code. Around the same time, Theodore Add left the project to found OpenBSD, focusing on security. Meanwhile, NetBSD continued to grow, adding the portable package source system and expanding support to over 50 hardware platforms, proudly living up to its motto, "Of course it runs NetBSD." Some people claim it even runs on a toaster.
Honestly, these days an average toaster has more RAM than a 1992 workstation. Of course it runs NetBSD.
Sure, but back in the 90s that was unthinkable. And unlike other major Linux and BSD flavors today, which have long dropped legacy platforms, NetBSD still includes them as so-called Tier 2 platforms even in the latest NetBSD 10.1. It took me a while to finally get here, with the repairs for the Performa 450 needed beforehand and equipping it with a network card, the Farallon Ethermac LC to be precise. Installing NetBSD on a 68K Mac isn't as straightforward as you may think. As opposed to other platforms where you can simply boot from a floppy or CD-ROM, that's not possible. Instead, you'll need to bootstrap it from the running Macintosh system software, as we'll see in a moment. Selecting a suitable system is as important too. When I did my repairs on both the LC2 and this Performa 450, which is actually just a rebranded LC3, I chose this one as I could equip it with 20 MB of RAM. That's a lot more than the minimum requirement of 8 MB. As for the disk, as seen in my previous episode, I equipped a 2 GB SCSI disk. Now, when formatting third-party SCSI drives on classic Macintosh systems, you may either fiddle around with Apple's HDSC utility. But as this one only works with Apple-branded drives, you need to patch it to make it work. Or you simply take Lido, which doesn't have this restriction and is in my opinion simpler to use. As you have to have a running system software to jumpstart into NetBSD, I prepared the 384 MB partition for System 7.5, roughly 1.7 GB for NetBSD and 32 MB for swap. Mind that you can't create traditional BSD slices here, but must use the Apple Unix partition types instead. Then I installed System 7.5, already network ready as shown in my previous episode, because who wants to juggle a dozen floppies? As I learned, the early versions of NetBSD 68K being rather buggy, I opted to go with NetBSD 1.5. This was released in December 2000, so should be reasonably stable to run. At least I thought so. But one after the other. As mentioned, you can't flip in a coaster and boot. You can boot an install kernel directly from System 7.5 and snag the install files off a CD-ROM or an FTP server. But that method is only available with later releases. Early NetBSD required you to download all the installed files and a set of extra utilities, notably the bootloader, the MKFS utility and the installer. You'll find them on the NetBSD FTP archive these days. And don't forget to turn on 32-bit memory addressing, as otherwise you won't be able to boot into NetBSD later on. Running MKFS is straightforward, asking you for the target partitions. Note how they are referred to as Unix System 5 Release 2 partitions for Apple Unix. And off goes the magic. One thing I tripped into was the installers. Obviously, there's two versions, 1.1H and 1.1G. Running release 1.1H on my vanilla System 7.5 threw an error. I didn't find any clues in the README files, but I assume 1.1H is for a later version than 7.5. At least, installer 1.1G worked. There's not much fuzz around it, you point it at the dist files to install and off we go.
Gosh, you once more managed to not pay attention to camera focus. Terrible.
Are you buying me a professional video capturing device? No? Then shh! Although it looked promising in the beginning, I repeatedly ended up with those obscure errors. And now, these are not really SCSI errors pointing at a defective disk drive, but seem indeed to be bugs. That would match with some of those old tutorials I've found, which said similar to cross your fingers and pray. So I retried with NetBSD 1.62, not without reformatting the partition of course, but to no avail. Trying the direct install method it is then, right? The booter utility allows you to select an install kernel residing on your Macintosh partition. It took quite a while to boot, and I did end up in SysInst, but upon trying to install, I'd repeatedly end up with obscure file system is full error messages, unable to continue.
Why don't you try a new version then?
I did, getting into it with NetBSD 2.0, but it showed the same fault. One of the readmes mentioned SysInst had a bug preventing it to mount the root file system. So I dropped into a shell, mounting the /dev/sd0a partition manually to /target root. And that did seem to do the trick, except it didn't create some of the configuration files like /etc/rc.conf. So I created this one manually with a bare minimum configuration and also set some initial passwords manually. Back to System 7.5, I tried booting into NetBSD 2.0 but found yet another crucial file was missing, /etc/fstab. Alright, so creating that one myself as well. At least that allowed me to finally boot into NetBSD 2.0.
It feels very slow.
Wait till you see X11. One eternity later. But my NetBSD experience wasn't the best yet. I oversaw obscure issues like seg faults when running top or simply the ps command. Also, even so, I got an IP address assigned via DHCP and I actually could open egress FTP connections, yet even pinging the machine from my other Mac, I couldn't ping anything myself. Even X11 failed to start. Definitely not what I had hoped for.
Why don't you try a newer version then?
I did, NetBSD 4.0, only to find it hangs during SCSI init. At least there was a hint in the README pointing at potential SCSI issues. One should try the SBC kernel instead. And that seemed to help, and I was brave enough to actually try and upgrade another full reinstall, which seemed to succeed. Five hours later. Unless it hangs again.
You did use the SBC kernel, did you?
Right, I didn't. I wasn't even asked for it. But booting one's more widely installed kernel allowed me to download the SBC kernel and extracting it to the root file system. Don't forget to point the booter utility at the SBC kernel instead of the default. And look, it boots, but don't let the time lapse fool you. From start to prompt, it takes a painfully long 6 minutes. But the obscure errors are finally gone, top works, and also X11 doesn't bail prematurely. But it takes long to start. I really thought my machine locked up or something. Keep in mind what this README says, it may take 20 minutes or so. It's no joke, it really took me 25 minutes until X11 showed up. One reason seems to be the absence of an FPU. Stocking an FPU is said to speed things up. I'll try to get an FPU for this machine, promised. Still, with just X11 and Xi's running, you get an idea on the CPU load. NetBSD, and X11 in particular, is really pushing it. But do you know what's pushing it even further? Installing package source to compile some open source software. Sure, but not today. How about you? What's your take on NetBSD, and did you ever try an alternative operating system on classic Macs? Share your thoughts and experience in the comments below. And if you'd like me to explore something particular, drop me your ideas. I'm the Vintage Collector, and this was my story for today. Thanks for watching, and while I take a short summer break, may your machines boot faster than mine ever did. See you again in August 2025.